it's Girls Camp. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Girls Camp podcast. I'm your host, Haley Rawl, and I am joined today by one of my favorite people ever.
Hello. I'm so happy to be back.
I cannot believe it's taken us this long to do a round two.
I can, because I have been avoiding it like the plague, because I had no idea the first time I came on.
Yeah.
I didn't really know you. I wasn't like super familiar with the podcast. And now I know that you're the smartest, coolest person alive, and your listeners are so amazing. Like every time we go out, like as a group or whatever, there'll be people who, and your listeners are always so respectful and so cool, and they'll like say hi in passing or whatever. And it's always the coolest person I've ever seen in my entire life who's like, Haley, I love your podcast. And I'm like, oh my God, these people have
I'm intimidated by my own
mouth.
listeners.
Yes.
When they send me a DM, I'm like, you are so smart. You need to be doing this podcast.
Yeah, no,
like, let's switch, please.
It's super scary, but I'm here to be the resident idiot.
Podcast listeners know I literally reference you all the time.
Oh, it's
I'm
my
always
favorite
like,
thing
well,
ever.
my friend Ash this, my friend Ash that. Whenever antidepressants come up, whenever spirituality stuff comes up, I'm always referencing my friend Ash. So I'm like,
I love that.
about
That's
time.
what I'm known for.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the listeners are probably like, oh, this is Ash, because it was so long when we first recorded.
I wasn't even on antidepressants yet. I really needed to be, but I was not.
Which we will talk about.
Yes.
We have so much to talk about. We are going to be talking about mainly, there's a lot of topics, but I feel like the main theme is going to be spirituality.
Mm-hmm.
And I was thinking about our friendship and how we both have a Mormon origin story. And I feel like I've landed in a pretty skeptical, agnostic, yes, but mostly leaning atheist place.
Uh-huh.
And you have landed in such a different place.
The exact opposite.
And
I'm like, everything is God.
No, and I love it. I learned so much from you, and it's so fun to have a friendship like this. Another thing I say about you frequently is that you make me believe in magic again.
Aww.
And whenever I find myself getting too skeptical, too practical, I'm like, I need a little dose of Ash in my life because this is getting boring.
Oh, that's so sweet. That's like the main reason that I still like cling to spirituality is I'm like, this is too boring. Like this can't be all that there is.
Yes, and it's fun. And I feel like the way you approach it is fun, but also grounded and ethical, and also just, I think you are unique in the space that you occupy, because for those who don't know, you are a palm reader by trade.
Yeah.
That's your job. You're incredible at it. You are the person I always text when I have an astrology question, when I'm like, what the fuck is going on? You're like, don't worry, Mercury's in retrograde, or you're in your Saturn return, or whatever. You're always right, by the way. So that has me questioning things too. So you are really into that world. And I want to talk more about that, because I also think a lot of my listeners are also that way.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not something that I really talk about because it's not so much like my experience in my day-to-day.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk about that. We've mentioned antidepressants. We're going to talk about that and kind of how that fits into your world. And then you have a really unique family situation.
Yeah. That I feel like your audience would understand, like more than anyone else.
Yes. Your family lives in Missouri right now, has moved. When did they move?
Almost 3 years ago.
Oh my gosh. Because it was right when we recorded.
Uh-huh.
They had just moved.
Uh-huh.
Because I remember you DM'd me and you're like, I'm fired up. I'm ready to go.
Yeah. And I'm even more fired up. Like 3 years is only
I can only imagine. Because they moved to Missouri to prepare for the Second Coming.
Yeah. Yep.
Because in Mormonism, for those who don't know, Jesus is going to come to Missouri.
Yep. That's where he's going to touch down during the Second Coming. That's where the Garden of Eden was too, if you didn't know.
Yes, Jackson County?
Jackson County, Missouri. Literally.
Do they live in Jackson County?
Oh, they live. So you know the temple plot that like the Mormons owned or something before they had to migrate west? They live right next to that. They bought the closest plot of land that they could find right next to that. I think it's called Adamon-Diamhi or something like that.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Even that topic, I'm like, we'll just have to have you as a regular. You are one of 9.
Yeah.
So you have 8 siblings, second oldest. Just the family stuff alone is so fascinating, but it becomes extra fascinating when I think of like where you are now and where you've landed with spirituality and how that all fits in. So let's get into it.
Yeah, I'm so excited.
The first thing I wanted to ask you is how you define spirituality.
Ooh, this is a good question. My spirituality, I've definitely landed in what people would call new age spirituality, which is just that it's pretty much completely untethered. There is no code, there is no religious group, there is no specific deity. Like, it's very, very loosey-goosey. I genuinely think that, like, everything I believe spiritually, I do believe is real. Like, I know, like, I sometimes kind of downplay it and I make it sound really like fun and silly. And I try not to hold things too like tightly, just because I think that that's fucking useless. But everything I believe spiritually, I really do believe in. And I do believe that what we call spirituality is just science that we don't understand. Like, I think it's all real, and I think it all follows a pattern. And some of it, like the way that I talk about spirituality does really, I still use a lot of the Mormon vernacular, and a lot of it is kind of like, it works in harmony with some of the things that I believed when I was believing Mormon. One of those being like, yeah, maybe somebody intentionally created this world and they did it using science. Like, I don't know if that was something that everybody was taught in Mormonism, but I was, that, like, you know, God used science to create everything. Somehow they were still evolution deniers. I don't know what the point of that was, but that was what I was taught when I was growing up Mormon. So yeah, I think just everything spiritual is just science that we don't yet understand, but you can still, like, you don't need to understand gravity for gravity to have an effect on you. You don't need to know how that works to interact with it. And that's exactly how I feel about spirituality, is I don't need to know what's going on in order to reap the benefits of a spiritual relationship with myself and with God. And that's my whole spiritual philosophy comes down to trying to connect with my own inner divinity and my own inner deity, but God also exists out there. So it's not, I think some people believe that, like, there is no God, it's just us, or everything is one and everything is God. I kind of believe it does kind of go along a little bit with what Mormonism teaches, which is like, I like the idea of, or I like the way to categorize it, to say that, like, God is our parent and we are the child, but we're all made of the same thing. We are like mini gods. And I do believe that, like, the separation that we experience between us and God is helping us to find our own inner divinity so that we can keep growing, the same way that, like, when a teenager grows up and moves out of the house, it's like, okay, you're on your own and I'm going to let you struggle. Like, if I'm the parent, I'm going to let you struggle and I'm going to let you be separate, even though I have everything I need to solve all of your problems. That's not the point. That's not what you're doing right now. It's not my job to fix all of your problems right now. It's my job to let you figure out that you can solve your problems and you can be self-referencing so that you can become something completely new. Does that kind of answer your question?
100%.
Okay.
Well, you were just talking about this on your stories. You were talking about, because you have a Patreon account. Everyone run there quickly. I will add it to the show notes. I loved the way you were talking about God as this parent relationship, where looking at God not as like a helicopter parent, but as a parent whose ultimate purpose is to foster independence and growth and progress.
Right.
And I thought that was such a cool framework for an outside of yourself God, because it solves so many of the questions that come to my mind when I think about God. And I think so many of the issues that maybe arise with other types of God that like can, you know, either answer a prayer or choose like not to answer a prayer. Like,
totally.
I don't know. I just really liked that concept of it. And I really like what you said about science, because I've actually been reading, I started this book called The Untethered Soul. Have you listened to that one? And I was going to start today, When Things Fall Apart, which is like, it's more like Buddhist philosophy, I would say. But there's like scientific touch points to a lot of it, but I wouldn't say it's like purely scientific either. But there's also these things where, I don't know if you ever heard of this, and I need to fact check this, but I'm pretty sure that someone did a study on water crystals and they spoke to one like petri dish of water crystals and were like mean to it. Yeah. And then they were like kind and loving to the other one, and the other one grew into like beautiful water crystals.
Isn't that fucking crazy? Well, they've done it with like, you can do it with rice. You put like the same water in two different things of rice, like rice and water. And then if you speak negatively to the one, it'll get all moldy, and then positively to the other, it won't. And it's like,
crazy is
it's an observable thing that's just like, so again, like I think I differ from a lot of people because, and I think a lot of people are like this, whether they're in religion, outside of religion. I just look at that and I'm like, I don't need to know why, but that's enough for me to say like, I'm going to pay attention to the thoughts that I think and the things I believe and what I put my energy into, because it clearly has some effect. So yeah, I don't need to understand why that works, but it is all kind of, if you dive deep into it, and this is why people love like Dr. Joe Dispenza, is he really kind of like marries, a lot of like spiritual things and scientific things. And a lot of people have a lot of problems with him because the scientific community works very, very differently from the religious community or spiritual people. Like a lot of spiritual people are like me, will just take one concept and run with it and believe it wholeheartedly. But, by nature, scientists need to be a lot more skeptical. And so a lot of people have a lot of issues with these kinds of things. But yeah, there's lots of people who've done the deep dive. And for me, I don't need, my favorite part about being not in a religion anymore is I don't need to convince anyone of anything. I don't even need to teach. I don't believe that I even need to teach my children what's correct for them spiritually, because I don't think that there is one correct thing that we're all supposed to land on. I think it's completely aligned for some people to land in a place of atheism because that will influence the way that they live this life. There are a lot of people, I was listening to somebody talk the other day, and they were saying that they have like a hard conversation that they need to have with their mom, and they're just going to have it in the next life because they don't think they can do it in this life. And in a way, it's like maybe that's a line for them, that they just like, they're not going to damage the relationship by trying to like have this conversation now. And that's the point. But then for other people who've landed in a place of atheism, if they were to live their life thinking like, oh, I'll take care of this in the next life, or if they believe in reincarnation and they're like, in my next life, I'll do X, Y, and Z, that would compromise the things that they're supposed to do and learn in this life. So I think it's very aligned for everyone to land in different places. And this is where I feel like I'm more controversial for people, because I think a lot of I have a lot of people who are ex-Mormon who follow me and work with me and stuff like that. And I think that they want me to land in a certain place, but I do believe that it's aligned for some people to be Mormon. I think that and that's a lot of how I make peace with my family having this crazy life decision that they've made, is they really believe that they're living their purpose. And who am I to say that they're not? Just because it's not true in the sense that they think it's true, and just because they are trying to convince me that it's true, that really doesn't have any bearing on like, that is true for them. And maybe that is a line for them. And maybe if that all crashes and burns and ruins their life and causes tremendous hurt, maybe that's aligned too. Maybe that's what they need to learn in this lifetime. Maybe my sisters, because the hardest part about them moving is that I have a lot of little sisters and they all moved with them. And I really worry about it not being good for them. But I do try to keep in mind, like, maybe that's where they need to be because,
and you found this spiritual place,
right,
having had that upbringing.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Yeah. No, I love that about you. And you are such a helpful touch point for me in like grounding myself when I can get, I think it's just easy to, get up in arms about things. And I think to your point too, like, I think it's good we have people who are all sorts of ways, because then it's what we need for like a harmonious community and like a global whatever. But I do think that it's a really healthy reminder that different people's brains and souls, however you want to conceive of it, are going to land in different places, and they need to. Last night, when I knew we were recording today, I saw this reel from this she's like a younger, gotta be like 18. I think her dad is like a Mormon come follow me influencer.
Wonderful.
And so her page is like, it's her Grace or something, and her name is Grace, which is cute. But I was kind of deep diving her page, and her thing is she's really into study. So she was talking about how, I guess, the new Mormon curriculum, you know how they rotate every year between like Doctrine and Covenants, Book of Mormon?
Yeah.
Well, it's the Old Testament year this year. So everyone's like, oh, the Old Testament, like it's so crazy. And she did this reel and she was like, here's how I'm approaching the Old Testament. And I'm actually really excited to like learn more about historical context, whatever. And I was like, that's pretty sick. And I really fuck with that. You are actually going to spend a lot of your time engaging in this ancient text.
Right.
That's cool. I don't spend time engaging in ancient text.
Right.
I wish I did more. I wish I was more studious. And I was able to see, oh, a lot of Mormons are really studious in this really cool way. And I can see how that really scratches this itch of like spiritual fulfillment by having a study plan where that you study it and then you go to church and you talk about it and you're all gaining insights from each other. And I was like, oh, I can talk to Ash about this because I knew you would like understand that through line I was seeing in Mormonism, but that just felt like spiritual at its core, right? And I think there's a lot of Mormonism that doesn't feel true spiritual at its core, but there's a lot that does.
Oh yeah, totally. And I think I really subscribe to the idea that there's many paths up one mountain. And so it's like if God is up here and God is, if God is at the top of the mountain and God is up here, there are many paths to get to God. I really think the downfall of religion is teaching it to children who don't understand nuance and archetypes and metaphor, because I think that especially like even Mormonism, if it was only taught to adults and it was only taught to people who could understand metaphor and nuance and not taught to children, I think that would be a lot healthier, even exactly as it is. Even all of the weird stuff, temples, garments, ceilings, even like the really, really complicated stuff of like the past and stuff. If you were taught it straight up as an adult and not indoctrinated from childhood to where you don't understand nuance, and the idea is put in your head that like, if you're gay, you're going to go to hell. If you can never act on this, like so much shame, so much fear. If you're a fully grown like gay adult who hears that and decides that that's how they want to live their life because it feels true for them, that's very different from being indoctrinated at a young age.
Totally.
So I really subscribe to like there's many paths up one mountain, and I really subscribe to like harm reduction. And there's a lot of things about living completely untethered to anything spiritual, especially like for children, that could be really scary. Like I don't know what it's like to be raised without any idea of like heaven or eternal families. And I actually would be so curious to speak with somebody who has been raised completely atheist, and like, were you ever worried about what happens after you die? Or were you just kind of like how did you handle grief? Do you feel like it's healthier than feeling like there's, like when grandma dies or somebody even younger or like tragically passes, like how do you feel about that? Do you feel more of an acceptance, or do you wish that you believed in like a heaven or something like that? So
yeah, it might be an opposite problem that my kids have, right? Where it's like, oh, I wish I had some sort of framework that I could, and I think there are ways to build frameworks outside of religion, but it is something that I've thought a lot about of like, oh, yes, me as a grown adult, I can be like, I don't think there's an afterlife. Mm-hmm. When I was a child and my dog died, like, would it have been helpful if my mom was like, well, see ya, like, yeah, that's the last time you're ever going to see Rocky, bitch. Like, I want to have some sort of framework. And I think I like what you're saying too, where it's like with children, especially what I find with religion and maybe even spirituality, though I think it's probably a less common pitfall, is you have to really condense it for children. Mm-hmm. So you say to a child, Joseph Smith is a prophet. And then they grow up, Joseph Smith's a prophet, Joseph Smith's a prophet. And then as they get old enough to have some more complexity added to that, that feels like betrayal and that feels complicated. But it's like, oh, but the core belief is Joseph Smith's a prophet. So now I'm confused and now I feel like misled or whatever, where I can understand why you have to distill certain things down for children, because you can't say, well, we believe Joseph Smith was a prophet. We also believe he had a 14-year-old wife and 34 wives and counting, like a child doesn't understand that. Yeah. But I do think that it is so much a healthier version to, not teach kids like a capital T truth. Mm-hmm. But then it does leave like room for other potential pitfalls. I
know. It's so hard that like we're not going to know what the gaps are because we're raising kids so different from the way we were raised, especially with Mormonism. There's an answer for everything. There's so few things. There's so few little things that people, especially for a kid and the questions that they're asking, like it's like you grow up, you get married in the temple. Nope, you can't be gay. You have to do this. You have to do that. This is exactly what you're doing after high school. You're going on a mission.
This is when you can date.
Exactly.
This is when you can kiss. This is how you can kiss.
Yes, this is exactly how far you can go with all of your boyfriends. And this is exactly what you do if you go farther than that. Like there's so many answers, and knowing, I do hope and pray that it like gives a little bit less anxiety, because having all of those answers more than anything just felt so suffocating to me. Mm-hmm. So I'm very interested to see what our kids say in 20 years. I'm
curious with your upbringing, because correct me if I'm wrong. I told you I couldn't listen to our original episode because it was too long ago. Yeah. So I'm embarrassed to listen to myself. But I think I remember you telling me that in your upbringing, even though your family is, I'm curious how you would even describe your family, because to move to Missouri and prepare for the Second Coming, like my family, I would consider devout Mormon. That's like in a whole different class of, I don't know if it's like extra devout or how you would classify that, But I also remember you telling me that there was kind of different types of spirituality woven into your upbringing outside of what is like a traditional Mormon framework.
Yes. Well, it's really interesting because my mom in particular is really like, it's really interesting to see that she's chosen this really devout Mormon life and just how that is like very traditional and very expected, because she is really kind of like a free spirit. She's always been a little bit against the grain. Like, she had 9 kids. She homeschooled all of them. And now homeschool is really popular. Like, she was the original homeschool crunchy mom. Like, we grew up taking
when
all this
people
stuff.
weren't doing it.
Oh yeah. When people were not doing it. And so it's really interesting that like somehow she just latched on to Mormonism as kind of her guiding light. And back in the day, so yeah, I was raised with a grandma who did energy work and other spiritual things. But back in the day, like 20 years ago, people weren't talking about, you know, Reiki and spirituality and all of these other things. There was room for that kind of stuff. And that was how I found my spirituality. Is there's nothing in, you know, Mormonism or the Come Follow Me manual, especially 20 years ago, that was saying don't meditate. It was, you know, I like when I started meditating, which led to like what I call my awakening and, you know, kind of got this whole thing started, is I was like, this is just the ponder part of like search, ponder, pray. There's nothing against, you know, sitting quietly. And for my grandma, who was like an energy worker kind of a thing, she would follow like the I Ching from like Chinese medicine or like Chinese spirituality. And she never did anything with astrology, because I think that had the stigma, but she would do Reiki.
And she was Mormon.
And she was Mormon. She was very, very, very Mormon.
Yeah.
And so there was just, it wasn't explicitly said not to. And there's a lot of women in particular who fell into that category. I don't know any men who subscribed to that, because they had their version of Reiki, the laying on of hands. And then versus women didn't have anything like that. So we would do, like, Reiki is literally laying on of hands. It's literally putting your hands over, you know, like a hurting knee and, you know, putting good energy into that. It's the exact same thing as giving a priesthood blessing. And so a lot of women have fallen into that. My grandma was one of them, and she practiced it her whole life, but then died very devout Mormon and did her, you know, was buried in her temple clothes and the whole 9 yards. And same thing with my mom. My mom kind of fell away from doing that kind of stuff after my grandma died. It was always more of my grandma's thing, but it made me feel very comfortable experimenting with other forms of spirituality that weren't explicitly denied. So like when I discovered manifestation, I was like, oh, this is just a different way to pray. You're still telling the universe or God, this is what I want. And then you're going into yourself and you're trying to act with faith, and then you get the thing. And it was just like a different framework for me to kind of do the same things. Also, a huge concept with manifestation and manifesting money is that people really believe that like you need to be charitable and generous with your money as a sign of like faith from the universe that more will come back to you. It's literally tithing. Like, so that was kind of the basis of me feeling like, oh, maybe this is just a different way to say the same thing. And it kind of helped me like tiptoe out of Mormonism without this big heartbreaking, earth shattering, like, oh my God, this isn't true. The other thing about the way I was raised Mormon is I knew about all of the dark church history stuff. None of that was a surprise. My parents would talk about how Joseph Smith had the young wives and all of these different things. And they just said, this is what people believe, but it's not true. Or yeah, he had a 13-year-old wife, but it was for eternity only, which now we know is not true. Like, that's not really a thing.
So they were addressing the harder parts of history that most people don't learn about until later.
Yeah.
Why do you think?
I think because they are the really studious, like they're so
really deep into it.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's why, you know, they moved to Missouri for the Second Coming. The prophet's not telling anybody to do that. The church has actually stepped way back on all of that. And like, if you go to the church site, which I have to be like, hey, you guys are being fucking crazy. It says like,
You're like, look at churchofjesuschrist.org,
yes.
please.
It's like, you know, it says focus on building Zion in your homes. Like, you don't need to worry about going to Missouri. But in the Doctrine and Covenants, it says the Garden of Eden was in Jackson County, Missouri, like, which is just so, I mean, now that I've been to, like, Missouri is the worst place on earth. Literally. It's the worst, ugliest place on earth.
They are taking it more literally than even the church official stance itself.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I know with the new year, many of us are looking to get into a better meal routine. For me personally, it is so hard to stay on top of tasty and healthy meal planning with work and life and parenthood. It just is always the first thing to go. I recently discovered Marley Spoon, and it has been a game changer. It makes cooking at home simple and fun and delicious. My partner Bentley and I made the Japanese chicken curry just the other night, It came together so quickly and it was so good and nourishing. On nights when you don't have time to cook at all, you can also order Marley Spoon's prepared meals. These will be ready on the table within literal minutes. They're so convenient, so nice to have on hand, and they're also very yummy and well-balanced meals. This new year, fast track your way to eating well with Marley Spoon. Head to marleyspoon.com/offer/girlscamp for up to 25 free meals. You heard me right, up to 25 free meals with Marley Spoon. That's marleyspoon.com/offer/girlscamp for up to 25 free meals. Marley Spoon, meals reimagined for real life. Interesting to think about with the harder parts of history, because the church just now is kind of, by absolute necessity of the internet, they're just now like introducing into curriculum like the Joseph Smith wives thing, like a little bit more about Brigham Young, the multiple first vision accounts, like things like that, that are now more mainstream being spoken about. So it's interesting to think about your family doing that sooner as more literal believers. It's almost like they got deeper through the layers and had to continue to believe despite the stuff that they were learning.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's made this really like, it's actually really interesting because I think it's a more convincing way to raise people who will continue being Mormons. Because for me, I've never had, like, no matter what I've learned about the church, actually the temple stuff really weirds me out, and that like nothing ruined my...
Because you never went through the temple.
Never went through the temple.
Before
and nothing,
you left. Yeah.
Nothing ruined my residual faith more than finding out that they make these sweet, lovely young brides wear a fugly outfit while they're getting married.
Rude.
Like, that's the cruelest thing I can imagine.
It's so rude. Yeah.
But it's made it really hard to ever have kind of this like shelf-breaking moment, or, you know, like this feeling of like, oh, I can definitively say that this isn't true, because everything that comes up, like Book of Abraham, the polygamy stuff, like all of these things that are huge shelf breakers for other people, I was raised knowing, and I have an answer for it. And it's just so deep in my subconscious that I'm like, well, what if? It's just really hard. So that's why I'm so grateful that the spirituality that I have was really like growing up and moving out of home and finding a partner that's right for me, who I am. Like, I don't need to hate where I came from. I don't need to, you know, like revoke everything that I taught. It's just, I'm not going to live with my parents forever. Same way I'm not going to be Mormon forever. Like, I'm going to go do what's better for me spiritually.
It's like an expansion, a progression, as opposed to like leaving everything behind and completely restarting again.
Totally. And I think I was talking with my sister about this, that Mormonism is really like a narcissistic parent, and it really instills a lot of like the concepts of Mormonism are very narcissistic. Like, you're special, you're chosen, you know, like a lot of these things. And when you have like that shelf breaking moment, I do feel like it is probably a lot like a huge betrayal from a parent, like growing up and realizing that you have a parent who like is a really bad person. Like, I think it can be really, really shattering to your self-image and can be really, really hurtful and traumatic. And I also think it's, in a lot of ways, because it's so traumatic to have that realization, I think it kind of promotes more self-discovery when you do have that, because it like rewrites how you see yourself, and you're more open to being like, well, who am I outside of this? I've really struggled on the opposite side of things to like find out who I am outside of Mormonism, because I'm like, why would I can still dress modest and not drink alcohol and not swear and like not do all of these things. And, you know, like, because, you know, there's no reason for me not to, because like, what, you know, whatever.
I can't believe we haven't talked about it to this degree, because I feel like so many people, not everyone, obviously, but so many people have such a similar exit out of Mormonism. And I feel like I'm more of the typical exit, which is like, you deconstruct Mormonism, you deconstruct religion. I do feel like there are plenty of Mormons who end up in more spiritual spaces, but there's a lot of people like me who then it's like, I'm never going to be tricked by anything again. I kind of denounced for a while, and I'm coming back around to it, which feels really exciting. But for a while, I was like, anything spiritual is completely off the table. Like, if you can't show me multiple peer-reviewed scientific studies, like, it's not real. And I feel like a lot of people end up that way. And it's interesting to think that how the place that you've ended up in some ways, maybe not entirely, but could be influenced by how much access you simply had to like the full picture of Mormonism, even as a young kid.
Yeah, it really influenced everything. Like it just, my parents are Mormon to the core, and I was Mormon to the core. It had nothing to do with culture. I think a lot of people, I don't relate to a lot of the Mormon culture stuff that people talk about because my parents were never like that. It was never about looking perfect. Like we were the weirdos. They're still the weirdos. Actually, weirdly enough, now that they live in Missouri, a lot of the people, everyone, we went to a church service there when I visited a couple of times ago. Everyone there is in on it. They're all like, God, Jesus is coming here. It was like attending a completely different church. It was so crazy.
I kind of want to go.
Oh, yeah, it was absolutely fascinating. It was like being in. I was like, this is so.
Do they
culty.
feel at home there then? Because
they
they're like,
love it.
oh, because they're all kind of on the same wavelength.
Yeah.
Because I mean, if your family came to a ward here in Lehi, Utah, and we're like, Jesus is literally coming to Jackson County, Missouri, and we need to all get there, people would be like, you're crazy.
Yes.
Like mainstream Mormons would, that's not the same as what mainstream Mormons would think or how they act, to your point. But the mainstream Mormon culture is more mainstream than what you grew up experiencing.
Yeah.
So it makes sense that your exit and your like subsequent, journey afterward is you probably, and I'm not trying to say everyone has the same journey because obviously that's not the case, but I do feel like, you look at even our friend group and those of us who are ex-Mormon and we, me, Lucy, Maddie, it's like, we went to these Utah high schools. We had these like the bishop experience, like all these things that maybe you just experienced differently because of the intensity of your upbringing.
Oh yeah. And like the huge thing about, I mean, to nobody's surprise, now that my parents have moved to Missouri, this is like not a surprise, but I think it's hard to explain how much the Second Coming and Doomsday were like a part of how I was raised. Every night we would get together and we would read these like fictional books about like world disasters, kind of like, like talking about like there being plagues and whatever. And we would read, visions of glory and like all of these things, like this really deep doctrine or speculation, or even like LDS fiction about the last days. Like it was so last days focused. It was deep and it was like intense. And yeah, I really love where I've landed spiritually because it, for the first time, has helped me kind of feel like life is worth living and it's not just all going downhill like hell in a handbasket. Yes. Yeah.
What have you been able to like completely uproot that last days? Because I find that's still one of the really deep ones for me that I'll still sometimes be like, oh, fuck, the rumors of wars, like what's happening. Do you still feel that way sometimes?
100%. And with my parents moving to, that was like the big scary thing that I was always worried about was it, I never thought my parents would actually do it, but it was kind of like this thing in the back of my mind is like, that's one of the things that will happen is the Saints will be called back to Missouri.
Because you grew up in Utah.
Yeah, we grew up in Utah. We grew up in Utah, Wyoming, Idaho. Like my dad's from Wyoming. So that was like kind of primarily where we grew up. We landed in Utah. And I remember just always kind of knowing when I started dating Alex, my husband, I was like worried that we wouldn't have a future together because I was like, if the prophet told everybody to go to Missouri, like I would go. Like, I don't know how we're going to have like a mixed faith marriage if, that's the kind of Mormon that I am. So when they moved, it caused like the biggest crisis for me because it was like all of my worst fears coming true. And really like my subconscious, like my deep inner child was like, it was so scary because I was like, oh my God, like this is so undeniable. I really struggle when people feel so confidently about things that I'm like, oh my God, what do you know that I don't know? Like how in the world are you so confident about this that you're going to go spend your life savings on a huge plot of land right next to the temple, move all of my siblings out there in the middle of nowhere, live in a camper because they still live in a camper for 3 years because this is what you believe. What do you know that I don't? It's so scary. But that being said, actually living, like being alive for a little bit longer has really helped soothe that because when COVID happened, I was like, okay, this is it. This is the end. And they weren't moved out there yet, but I was like, this is it. This is the end. And then COVID passed and it obviously had, for a lot of people, some people had like really horrible personal losses, but in the grand scheme of the world, it just passed. Like when Pompeii erupted, the people of Pompeii were probably like, this is the end of the world.
Yes.
And when there's ever been a natural disaster, like the people who experienced it, that was the end of their world, but it's not the end of the world.
Yep. And COVID felt very apocalyptic.
Oh
I
my
think
God.
we forget, and I didn't have that same baggage of upbringing, but there were multiple days where I was like, everyone's going to get sick and die.
Oh, yeah.
Like everything's collapsing. The economy is collapsing. And then to your point, it's like we were all on TikTok for a few months. And yeah, not to downplay, like you said, like it was a hugely significant global event and people died and people are still suffering consequences from it. And the world
It was
is
not the end of the world.
continuing, Yeah. To turn.
Yeah. So I have not eradicated that fear, but I have learned how to live with it. And studying other religions has really, really, really helped me. Like studying how many religions there have been that have predicted the end of the world. And it's just a human thing to always feel like our generation is the last, because we don't think about the world. Like we're so kind of self-centered naturally that it's like, I'm not thinking about what the world is going to be like in 500 years. Like not really, because it's like, well, the world started with me and it's going to end with me.
We like think we're the future.
Yes.
I did a historical deep dive on Jesus, and there was this professor's lecture I was listening to, and he said that Jesus, when he was a preacher alive at the time, he thought the world was literally going to end. He was going to usher in like a complete upheaval of the government. Like, so when he was saying like the kingdom of God is nigh, he wasn't saying that to us who now can open up the Bible and read that. He was saying that to the person he was speaking to. He was like, the world is going to end for you. And then he died and it didn't. The world didn't end. And it was such a fascinating like paradigm shift for me, because I realized, oh, I grew up reading what Jesus said about the world ending. And I thought he was talking to me, Haley Rawl, who has 70, 80 years or whatever on this earth. He's not talking to me. He was actually talking to people thousands and thousands of years ago. And the world didn't end then either. And it was so crazy, because that was I realized when I learned that I still was holding on to like, well, the world must end sometime in some sort of apocalypse. And I'm like, it doesn't actually ever have to end in some like crazy apocalyptic way. I just have that so deep in my psyche, even after Mormonism, that like the world is on some timeline. But a lot of religions don't believe the world's on a timeline at all. They see things as cyclical or whatever. And that was such a freeing idea for me to think about, like, Jesus said the world was going to end and it didn't. And it still hasn't. Right. And so why is it all of a sudden going to end for me now?
Right. Well, and even like Joseph Smith, like they thought that it was like the latter days, as in like their lifetimes. And it's so weird that now we read it and we're like, well, they meant in the grand scheme of things, we're in the last 200 years, which happens to be right now.
And no one knows the time or the day. So if anyone says they know the time or the day, they're wrong. But it will come. And it's coming soon enough that we need to worry about it.
Well, one of the things you mentioned, like how some religions believe that things are cyclical, and the belief that I feel like has granted me the most peace outside of Mormonism is the idea of reincarnation. And it fits so well into what I have experienced this life to be. And it's like, why don't we remember the premortal existence if that was so important? If we did so much growing and then we're born and like then our faith is being tested, like that's so like that Mormon concept of being born and then your faith being tested is kind of like, if I wiped your memory, like, are you still going to be faithful to Bentley? Like, what in the world does that prove? Like, that makes no sense whatsoever. Versus reincarnation in a lot of like Buddhist theories is really just about learning everything a human can learn so that you can reach enlightenment, so that you can reach greater love. Like that just makes so much sense to me and really has given me such a feeling of peace about just how bad things have been in the world formerly and how much I need to take care of the earth moving forward.
Yes. I want to talk to you about palm reading specifically because, like I said, that's your job. You've done a reading for me that was truly life-changing. I tell you this all the time. And that's as someone who like, I wouldn't say I don't believe in it, but I like it doesn't really fit into my worldview or my framework. I wanted to ask you, because I love hearing you explain these things like reincarnation. What do you feel like is happening when you are doing a palm reading?
Right. So with palm reading, I've always believed that our body is giving us messages. Like that's one of my foundational beliefs, is that your body's always talking to you. So when you have, like those days that you just randomly feel sick before an event that you're nervous about, it's like your body is telling you that like we're stressed, we're nervous, whatever. Like there's always a message of your body. And there's a lot of really interesting like books and theories that you can read about specific like ailments meaning certain things, and certain traumas creating certain ailments in the body. Like it's getting to the point where now there's a lot of science intersecting with these things. So I've always believed that the body speaks to us. And with palm reading, I do feel like for whatever reason, and again, I don't need to know the reason, for whatever reason, the lines on your hand are another way that your body is speaking to you. And my belief in palm reading really intersects with my belief in manifestation, which is the belief that we are co-creating our lives and our realities because of that like inner divinity that we each have. And when I look at a palm, what I'm seeing is kind of a roadmap to your subconscious. So I can see a lot of the like the blocks and the like limiting beliefs that people have, and a lot of the trauma that people have, and like the way that affects your life moving forward. Because if there's somebody who has a really, really, really deep trauma around like not letting people in, like they let somebody in, or they were a child and somebody close to them hurt or abused them, it creates this really deep, like in your body feeling of like it is not safe to be close to people. And so when you look at that inner belief, that inner block, it's whether you can call it magic, you can call it energetics, you can call it manifestation, or just the simple fact that like you're not going to want to let anybody close to you. So if somebody comes to me and they're like, am I going to, meet my soulmate, or what can I do to manifest this love that I want? You can look at the palm and see that there is a wound and that there needs to be healing in order to create that. And so I do look at it from an energetic and spiritual place of like, energetically, you might be dating and looking and doing all of the right things, but you're not aligning with this deep, intimate relationship that you want because you don't actually want it on a deep body energetic level. Getting that close to someone, you don't actually want that. And so it's not going to come to you. And so that's when it comes to, it kind of comes out as like future reading, where somebody's like, am I going to meet my soulmate? And you can look and be like, well, on this path that you're currently on, the way that your subconscious currently works, the way that your nervous system currently works, no, you're not open to that. And that can always change. That's
you're not
the thing.
ready for it. You're not aligned.
Exactly.
Get
so
there.
It's always supposed to be a mirror. And so when I do readings, I always try to emphasize to people, like, if you don't like what I'm reading, take this information and like, whether you believe in it, don't believe in it, whatever, if you don't like it, if it doesn't resonate, change the story. You decide, like, let this be something that helps you realize, like, I don't claim that. I don't claim that just because somebody screwed me over 5, 10, 15 years ago, that this is my life for forever. I'm going to combat that natural urge to like push people away or go for somebody that I know isn't going to be right for me. I'm going to combat that so that I can have the thing that I want.
Yes.
So it's not about, becoming somebody's like prophet or, a patriarch and giving like a patriarchal blessing of like, this will happen. It's almost like a GPS. This is where you're headed. Do you want to be heading that way? No, then like, let's change it. Or if you do want to be heading that way, then great. And here's what you can do to kind of get there a little bit faster. These are the things that you can work on. So it's really a map of your subconscious, your nervous system, and it, tells the future in the sense that I really do believe and have seen that we can kind of co-create what's happening in our lives to a degree. Like manifestation goes so deep, and I like, that's another topic that I could like dive so deep into.
Oh my gosh. I want to do like a double header because I want to just talk about manifestation. I've been thinking about this so much. Well, first of all, thank you for describing that. It's so beautiful to hear you talk about this. And I think you are just so intuitive and so wise. And I think it's so cool that that's the tool that I feel like your intuition and your wisdom is like channeling through. And I feel that way when I talk to you about astrology. Like, you are knowledgeable about astrology, and like, okay, Haley, you're this age. That means you're in your Saturn return. And then I have the added benefit of me, and you kind of know more about my life story. And so to have like this knowledge that you can draw from, and then this wisdom and intuition just creates like truly like such unique insight that I have benefited so much from. So I'm just really grateful for it. And I love hearing you talk about like how the sausage is made.
Thank you.
I want to talk about manifestation, but quickly before we do, I wanted to ask you what you think are the common pitfalls of, let's just say, new age spirituality and how you avoid them.
Oh my God. It's the same. That was the craziest thing for me leaving religion is it's the same shit. It's money abuse. It's power abuse. It's sexual abuse. It's not being attached to reality. It's thinking that you're better than other people. So pretty soon after I kind of like was comfortable having like left the church, and I was really, for a while, I was really into consuming the spiritual media. I did a yoga teacher training that was really, really intense and like a really tight knit, close spiritual group of people. And I did a shamanic training, like same type of a thing. I was really, really into it. And shortly after that, there was this big astrological event of like, we're entering the age of Aquarius, which is like where, you know, per what all of these spiritual people said, that, you know, half of everyone will like ascend to this new reality, and half of everyone else, like the people who aren't ready or not at that vibration, they'll stay down here, like where it's low, and you have to like ascend and be on this other timeline. And it's the exact same kind of like us versus them, enlightenment versus not, a lot of really feeling like other people are not on your level if they don't believe what you believe. And another huge thing is the tendency to evangelize what you have learned or what you believe and try to convince other people of it. And I think that that really is not human nature. I think it comes a lot from being raised in religion, because most of the religions that, you know, like in America, Christianity is very like, you got to go spread the word, because through Jesus we'll all be saved, and we have to go, you know, save everyone. And then Mormonism obviously has its own, missionary work type of rhetoric. And so when I first had like my spiritual awakening and I was into all of this, it felt just as imperative to go spread the word about, you know, everybody's got to be meditating, and everybody has to be leaving religion, and everybody has to be doing plant medicine, and everybody has to be doing all of these things so that I can share the truth. And as time has gone on, that belief has really just eroded away, because why? I found my best spiritual practices, I found myself. I found by just getting rid of the noise. Why am I going to go add noise to anybody else's life? Why am I going to sit here and tell Haley that she needs to meditate and do plant medicine and do all of these other things to find her spirituality, when it's like, you will find where you need to be by listening to yourself. And so whenever I'm doing a palm reading or anything like that, or even just talking to somebody, I just really try to, you know, direct people back to like, listen to yourself, because your relationship with God, with life, and with yourself that you need to have in this life is only going to come like figuring out what that is. Nobody can tell you what that is. It has to come from just spending time with yourself. It's literally like any other aspect of your life, figuring out what you want in a relationship, figuring out what you want sexually. Like, you have to just boots on the ground to live your life and see what resonates and what doesn't. So there are so many pitfalls with just the way people act outside of religion. It's really just they mirror the religious aspect of control and authority and dominance, and, you know, trying to use it for money. Like, that's a big thing that I have to be very mindful of, is people taking money for my services. And I have really clear practices around the money of it, and how much, you know, not doing work when I'm not in the right headspace. Like, I will be a bad business owner before I'm a bad spiritual friend. I'm not going to do a reading to be like, oh, I said it was going to be done on this
make
time,
the money and get it off.
Yeah, to make the money. I'll if anybody has ever said like, I didn't like this, full refund immediately. Like, I don't give a fuck. I'm not going to. It's not ever going to be worth it to me or anyone else. And if I can't make a living doing that, I'll have to go get a different job. And that's totally fine. I'm trying to put myself out of business. My goal is to give one really good reading that will last you 30 years and not have people coming back all the time. I don't want to be anybody's guru. I don't want to be anybody's prophet or anybody's bishop or anything like that. And it's interesting, because the more deeply you were raised to outsource your spirituality via, there's a bishop, there's, you know, your dad is the spiritual leader of your home, and then there's a bishop over here, him, and then there's the, you know, prophet all the way up there. The more people are indoctrinated into that, I do feel like the more they look for somebody outside of them to outsource their spiritual authority.
100%. Wow. So much there. And I was thinking in preparing for this episode, because I kind of have a hard time putting this in a different context. Like, I think I'm finally ready. I've kind of tried this before and it hasn't gotten super well. People who have listened know, but I think I'm ready to like interview a Christian and be able to like open-heartedly just have a conversation with them without all my own baggage showing up, right? Which I don't think I've been ready to do until like this point in my healing journey. And so I was thinking that with you. I mean, obviously you're like my best friend. So I wasn't like concerned about tension or anything, but I was like, okay, you know, obviously I want to be able to stand true in what I think and what I believe, but I also want to give Ash space to share all of her things. And I was like, it feels so easy to do that with you because never have I ever, in even the slightest way, felt like a breaching of like, you really should try this though, or like, oh, what about this though? Like, and that's so hard to do. I do that all the fucking time from my vantage point. And I'm really trying to like take a page out of your book of like, that is, first of all, like you said, completely unproductive. And number two, it's like, that's so antithetical to what I'm trying to do and what I'm trying to preach, which is like, go your own way. And I love what you said about people coming to things on their own terms and in their own time. And that is one thing that I think I've had way less experience with that in the New Age spirituality world, but I have had some experiences where I've kind of had people like maybe send a DM or be like, well, you really should XYZ. And it's kind of given me a little bit of that feeling of like, don't tell me what to do. And like, I'm coming from a different framework. Whereas someone like you, it's like, you've always let me come to you and I come to you often, but I just think you're so good at that. And from a human psychology standpoint, that is such a difficult thing to do because when you care about something, you want to evangelize it. And to your point about Christianity, I was just thinking this because I went to a Catholic mass and for Christmas Eve, and it was really cool and it was really great. And the only thing that I found like a little bit of like, was like the sign of like, do you want to be Catholic? Call this number. Like, and I get it. And it's not even that I fault it because I'm like, these people have found their peace. They found their thing and they want to share it. But with Christianity, which I do think is very different from New Age spirituality, there is it's like a core tenet of Christianity is like, you need to tell everyone or else everyone's going to hell. So you have to tell them. And that just becomes so bad, honestly, so quickly. And the other thing I think about you, and this is something I try and check myself on, is immediately when you're talking, like I've had an experience where I'm talking to someone and then they'll be like, yeah, so in my walk with Jesus. And I'm like, why are you talking to me like I believe the same thing you do? And I feel like that can sometimes happen in New Age spirituality as well. And I feel like using more like universal accepting language, I also want to be better at, of just like not assuming everyone's in the same space as you. Does that make sense?
It does, but I love the way that you talk. Like I'm kind of the opposite. I love when people will just like take their vantage point and tell me about the way you see the world.
Okay, cool.
And I've wondered so many times if it's hard for you to be friends with me just because you know that I'm like a wackadoo spiritual, like whatever. And it's like, it bleeds into literally everything that I do. So yeah, No,
that's a good distinction because I feel like there's a difference between like authenticity and not needing, like, that's why I was saying, I think for a while, and it was maybe a Mormon holdover, and I still sometimes get in my head about this because I'll go hang out with like my Mormon family and I'm like, oh, should I have like said something there? Is that inauthentic of me to have just been like, that sounds great that you learned that in Relief Society, you know? But I'm like, but I really do feel that way. But then I also do feel the way I feel when I sit here and I go on my tirades against Mormonism. So I think that there is an authenticity piece. And then there's also this piece of just like, I think just respect for other people and understanding that like, I guess sometimes there feels like an implicit, like if you're talking to someone and they're like, well, yeah, you know, like if someone suggests that you pray about something and they don't really know you, it's like, well, you don't have any idea what my belief framework is. So that feels like a bit of a boundary crossing without like knowing, you know?
Like this is how you're going to find your answer.
Yes. And so I feel like you just walk that line really, really beautifully. And I mean, the point I'm getting at, which is like, no shit, is like, it's so wonderful to be connected to people who think differently than you, especially spiritually. And it's fun and it's cool and it's interesting. And like, I really feel like I get to learn from you and have my eyes open to new ways of thinking and feeling and connecting to myself and to the world. And I think in an ideal world, we could all do that. And we could all land in different places and think differently, but just like not have all of those wedges in the way that make it really difficult sometimes to talk to people who believe differently than you do.
Oh yeah. And I feel like the experience that I had that shaped the way that I'm able to approach this is I had a time that I would definitely classify as spiritual psychosis. It was like right after my family moved, everything felt so scary. I was having really bad problems in my personal life. I was processing like really traumatic stuff. And I fell deep, deep, deep into a lot of, I don't know if this is what people call magical thinking or whatever, but I was really disconnected from reality in a really scary way. And this is where it was reaffirmed that like the only thing that I ever want to trust is what I feel and what tethers me when I'm quiet and I'm by myself and I feel that like pure connection with God that goes right through me as a human and goes right through my pure connection to like my highest self. That's the only thing I can trust, because it was a really, really bad dark time. And there's like this kind of thought pattern in a lot of new age spirituality that's like, this life is like a video game, and people who get too into manifestation are really into like, you can, realm hop and, do all of this different stuff. And I was like, I'm stuck in the wrong level of a video game and I need to end my life to get out of it. That was like really the thought process that just like kept coming in and coming in and coming in. And I felt like I had manifested this, horrible situation with my family moving, which was really traumatic for a number of reasons. And, just all these other things in my life. And I was talking with our friend Lucy, and she was talking about how she went cold turkey, stopped praying, like stopped talking about, stopped being spiritual at all, stopped trying to communicate with God at all. And for me, I know that like I will probably always be like a spiritual person. That doesn't resonate with me. And I know that she lives her life like that, and that doesn't resonate with me. However, at the time that I was experiencing that, when she said that, when she was talking and I was like, I feel like I manifested this, bad situation. She was like, that's crazy. And just her like emphatically saying like, that is not real. That is not true. Even though I do believe that like I manifest my reality, like even though that's not my core belief moving forward for the rest of my life, that perspective like got into my worldview. And so for a time, I completely stopped praying, pulling cards, doing palm readings, completely stopped, like just was a human being for a minute. And it grounded me. That was the time that I got on antidepressants. It grounded me into reality in a new way. That was what I needed at that time. So I think it's really important to let people have their differing experiences, because for me at that time, the message of like, forget the spirituality, forget all of this crap right now and just focus on becoming okay as a human was exactly what I needed at that time. And so without Lucy having this like completely different worldview and spiritual experience that I have, that I know is not going to be for me for life, it really I feel like it saved my life at a time. And it was not about like the spirituality necessarily. It was just like my mental health was bad.
Yeah.
And instead of addressing my mental health, I was only trying to address my spiritual health and like find spiritual answers. And like, if I pull one more tarot card, it will tell me exactly what I need to know to get me out of it. And what I really needed was just to step away from all of that and like talk to a doctor, get some antidepressants, and like drink some water. That was what I needed to be okay. So that experience really solidified how much I never, ever, 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 ever want to think that I have the answers for people like in my lifetime, because everybody's like, what I believe is true for me is like totally different from how other people need to live their life. And I can still freely talk about what I believe, and maybe that will inspire somebody to start meditating. That doesn't mean that they need to meditate every day like I do. That doesn't mean that they need to be, leave their religion like I did.
Totally.
I hope that makes sense.
100%. And I'm thinking about I guess maybe the distinction, but how intertwined they are, which is a good thing, but can be a bad thing, is any spirituality and mental health. Because it has been proven that spirituality is good for mental health. That is proven. It is, I mean, there's lower suicide rates for teenagers who are spiritual. I'm not saying religious, I'm saying spiritual. So there is, and this was kind of a hard pill for me to swallow when I kind of ended up in my place where I maybe was like a year or something ago, where I was like, none of it's real. I've been duped. Anytime I dipped my toes, I would feel kind of duped again. And then I realized there is truly mental health benefits to having spirituality in your life. And I appreciate what you pointed out there, which is, and I think that I can relate to this from a Mormon standpoint when I was like on my mission and my mental health was absolute garbage for the reasons you can imagine on a Mormon mission. And I was like, I have to pray more. I have to read my scriptures more. This is God testing me. Infertility was ultimately what broke my shelf around God, is because I was mentally struggling on a mental health clinical level. And I was thinking that Mormonism was going to fix my mental health or God. Like,
Right.
okay, if I just pray enough, God's testing me, right? I was connecting those things in a way that ended up being detrimental. And so I think that that's such a nice way to think about it, is like spirituality and mental health are intertwined, but there also is such a thing as like mental health that sometimes needs to be treated through like medicine or just therapy or whatever it may be. And those things can overlap a lot. But I think sometimes they get too intertwined in a way that can be detrimental to both.
I honestly don't think like that they're super, like it's really crazy to me to think that I ever believed that everything that happens is like a test of faith, or everything that happens has like a spiritual answer, because no, it doesn't. Like we came here, we chose this incarnation in this life to have a human experience. The whole point of this life is to not circumvent the human experience and like get out of all of our emotions and all of our problems through spirituality. But that's really how I was taught. Like everything ties back to spirituality. And I just don't see it that way at all now. Like a lot of the time, like I think back through, you know, you wouldn't have Maud and Clem exactly as they are if you hadn't gone through exactly what you did. 100%. And so maybe that's the point.
No, I think about this all the time.
Yeah.
I'm so glad. And I mean, for anyone who's in the midst of it, I would never have said this when I was in the midst of it, but I still feel like I hopefully it's okay to say, I'm so glad that my journey to getting my children was what it was. I needed it. And I also think there's something to be said about like something can happen and then you kind of have the choice to like make your meaning out of it and to like to learn and grow from it or to not, maybe, you know? So I think there's some of that there as well. But yes, I mean, I absolutely think that's true. And it's funny because that's kind of, someone could say, well, there you go. You know, God knew that. So God made you do that in order to, and I don't believe that at all. But I do believe something kind of similar, which is that like ultimately it ended up serving me now as a mom. And I wouldn't have had twins if I didn't have to do IVF. They're meant to be twins. They're meant to, I mean, you know them.
Yes.
Like this, we are meant to be as a family. And this was the path to get there, right? So in that way, it's kind of like, oh, I am maybe more similar in some ways to someone who would say like, well, yeah, God knew that. But to me, that doesn't work because I'm like, I don't want to believe in a God who would, you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
So like it gets complicated, but yeah, I appreciate you pointing that out because I do think it is connected. And I like what you said about like, I think it can get stressful when you think that things are within your control based on how good of a spiritual person you are and how like well you perform spiritually, whether within religion or without religion. And I love what you said about spirituality being a cheat code, because the spirituality I now resonate with more and more is spirituality is living life in the highs and the lows and the changing of mind and the changing of spirituality. That's the point. It's not to find something that protects you from the highs and the lows. It's to like learn to live within them.
Yeah,
you know?
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's what you were just talking about is like what I'm talking about when I say like there's an inner divinity, you creating your own meaning and you creating this life that you did with your decisions in the physical realm to do IVF, to, you know, choose the amount of embryos that you did, like those decisions, that is creation. And that takes you from somebody who's like acted upon to somebody who is co-creating and creating your own life. Like that is what the inner divinity is. Like you are a creator. That's what, you know, that's all we believe God is like the thing that created all of this. Is like you are creating your own life. So yeah, that's that inner divinity that I feel like where it's not God had a plan. It's like you made something beautiful and meaningful out of this. And that's not a given. There are a lot of people who, and infertility is a horrible example because there's genuinely nothing more traumatic, but there's a lot of people who are handed life circumstances that are good, that are decent, that are bad, that are awful, and they just don't create anything out of it. There's people who do so much with so little, and there's people who do nothing with the world is handed to them, all the privilege, all the money, all the everything. And so wherever you land, like whatever situation you're born into, I do feel like the point or purpose of at least my life is to become as much of a creator as I can and do the most with what I can in every possible way that I can.
I am so appreciative of that because I have had with the twins, it was a really hard decision to put 2 in or not. Like we got to choose. I mean, you don't know what's going to happen, but we got to choose like, do we want twins or not? That's kind of crazy. Most people, you don't get to choose that. And it was such a hard decision to make because it also increased like the risk of pregnancy. So I'm like, am I making a selfish decision to have twins? And then what if because I chose twins, then they both are harmed in some way, whatever. There's so much that goes into that. And I didn't want to pray about it because I didn't want to. And so I really had to access my own, like, it was Bentley and I, and we were just like, what do we think? But it was more on me because it was my body that was going to be doing this thing. And I love what you said so much because there still is a little part of me sometimes when things are so crazy with twins where I'm like, like, could I have been a better mom if I did one at a time? Like, could they have a better life if I love what you said because that just like shifted something slightly, but in a significant way of like, I chose this and I created this. And I'm so proud of what I've created. And I'm so proud of what we have. And I can stand in that decision that I made and I don't need to question it. Right. Because like, does that make sense? Like
absolutely.
It helped me. Yeah, that's like a huge thing for me because it's not like it's on my mind all the time, but there have been multiple times where I'm like, was that the right decision though?
Right.
And it's like, no, it was because I know myself and I think I knew them in a way too before they came. And like, this is all, I think, just how it's supposed to be.
Right. And also like, this is how it is. Like there is no alternate reality where you made a different decision or God had this plan for you that you would do something else or that you would hold the faith and then you would get miraculously pregnant this different way with this different, situation. Like you created this reality and this is the one that exists and they are twins and they are here and they're wonderful and they're beautiful and there is no alternate reality where things were different. And that gives me so much peace and helps like ground me. And in some situations it's like really hard because like, when things don't go the way that I wanted or I make a decision that I'm like, that was definitely the wrong decision. It gives a lot of like peace and understanding of like, I'm not being punished or rewarded because I like followed God's plan for me. I'm just experiencing the fruits of my own creation. So,
and even when they're bad, it's like, it creates more acceptance around that.
Yeah, for sure.
Because I made a bad business decision. I've like talked about this here and there, but it was switching management. I wish I didn't. And I was like so torn up over it for so long, even though the actual fallout was not even that significant. And Bentley kept being like, you learned. And I was like, but I could have this, I could have that. It was all this. And he's like, but you're here and you learned. And now next time you're confronted with the decision, you'll just know more.
Yeah. And odds are you'll make a better decision than you like. 100%. It'll lead to a new third thing.
Yes.
That will be the better decision for you. Yeah.
And that's what's so beautiful about thinking about co-creation is like whether it turns out a good way or a way you want or not, it's like there's so much less mental back and forth of like, even like you were saying, this can happen in New Age spirituality too. Like, well, did I manifest something incorrectly and therefore this, and this? It just like takes away a lot of layers that I feel like were really weighty for me as a Mormon of like, am I experiencing infertility because I'm not righteous enough? Or is it because I do need to learn a lesson and which one is it? And maybe if I read my scriptures more, whatever. It's like now I can just be like, I'm experiencing infertility. This is happening. How can I best take care of myself through this and make decisions moving forward? We're going to have to do a separate episode on manifestation. But before you go, I do want to ask about antidepressants.
Yes.
Because I always am referring people to you because this is a huge thing for people, Ash.
Yeah.
Like, because anytime you talk about it, it gets such a huge response. People still really, really struggle to make the step to get on antidepressants. And I actually talked about this in a recent episode and I said, I get it. I'm not here to be like, let's just throw Prozac at whoever walks through the door. Like it's a consideration. There's consideration.
Let's throw Zoloft at whoever walks through the door. 50 milligrams.
Your Zoloft's really, huh?
Yes.
So are my sisters. I'm sad. I feel left out. I'm on Prozac. But I want to hear how you ended up deciding to get on an antidepressant because I know it was really hard for you.
Yes. So where I'm at with my whole life journey is you said something that just resonates so much is just like living life is the most spiritual thing that you can do. Like that's where I'm at with my spirituality, where I'm not like meditating every single day. And I promise this answers like the antidepressant question, but like I'm not meditating every single day anymore. And I'm not doing all the esoteric things, and I'm not carrying crystals around anymore, because I'm raising children. And that is the most spiritual, significant, like it does not get any more real than that. Having a fresh human mind around it that you are shaping is like, that's as pure as it gets. Like if anybody knows what's happening in the universe, it's a little kid. And my job is to just not get in the way of them becoming the most authentic version of themselves and not get in the way of their connection with God. That's what I believe. And so I knew that I was depressed for years and years and years and years and years. I struggled with everything a teenager can struggle with, self-harm and suicidal ideation and all these different things as a kid. And I was raised in a very crunchy household, and we just did not do medication, even like no Advil for headaches type of a thing. So it was very
Period
much
cramps. You're just on your own.
Nope. So I always had the idea, whenever something would happen, whether it was like physical pain or, mental anguish, which is like, there's a message here. There's something that needs to be fixed here. This is, and I think that's really common for people who are experiencing mental health challenges, is it feels like you're failing in some way. And I think it's natural and probably healthy to assume that if something is going wrong, there's a root cause.
Yeah.
So I was always just searching for the root cause while trying to handle the symptoms with exercise, diet, supplements, things like that, which I do ultimately believe is a healthy way to go about things. And I always said that I would handle things holistically. And then I learned the definition of holistic, which is literally the definition of holistic is taking care of like each part of the whole. And so that was a key piece of deciding to get on antidepressants, was realizing that while I was treating my mental health, I wasn't doing anything to treat my mental health. I was just doing spiritual things and physical health things. I wasn't doing anything to treat my mental health.
So if there's a pie, you're like going so hard on these pieces, but there's still a missing piece of the pie.
Totally. And then being like, well, why isn't my mental health better? So ultimately, I made the decision to get on antidepressants because I had my first child, and I still just wanted to die. I remember thinking, how has the human race persisted? Because this is just hell. And I would hear these quotes about people being like, the beauty and the pain through all of it. Like, I'm just glad to be alive. And I'd be like, I'm not. It's all, I have this most beautiful, perfect, wonderful, easy, fantastic, lovely child in front of me. And all I feel is like, oh my God, I can't believe I brought her into this world. And like, this is the thing I've wanted more than anything for my entire life. And she is pure joy. And I still am like, this beauty is not worth the pain that I'm in all the fucking time. And so that was like where my head was at. And I really what happened, and this is why I'm so vocal about it, is my mom got on antidepressants, and she prescribed it to she took one of my younger sisters to a doctor when she started having mental health troubles. And my mom has 9 kids. So this is her 6th daughter, and all of us have mental health issues. And she was like, I'm not doing this again. So she got my younger sister on a low dose of Zoloft. It helped her tremendously. So my mom got on it. It helped her tremendously. So I was talking to my mom, and she was like, you know what? Just maybe you take it right now just to help you through this time with Mars where she's so little. And I was like, you know what? I can't, like, I did bring her into this world. I'm not going to sit here and think all the time about like, oh, what have I done? I did. So she can't have a depressed mom. So I don't care if I'm shooting myself in the foot and I'm going to be, numb and not able to, figure out what the underlying cause is. I'm just going to get on medication.
I just need to be okay enough to like continue for now.
Yes. Yeah. And it just opened my world up like nothing else ever has. And I realize now that like, I don't know why, but I have depression. The same way sometimes people are born with a limb difference, or they just develop a sickness, and if there's a deeper meaning to it, I don't know what it is. And honestly, at this point, I don't care, because I was doing so much every single day with no results, by the way, like no success, to try to figure out what was wrong with me. Do I need to be spending less time on my phone? I was like, the way I was living like a monk, no alcohol, no fun, no drugs, no doing anything. Like I was living such a pure, clean, healthy lifestyle, trying to like eliminate my depression, analyzing every life choice I've ever made, trying to do everything correctly so that I wouldn't have depression anymore. I don't know why my brain just doesn't produce enough serotonin. Like that's where I've landed now. And it just absolutely changed my world. Like I could never even express. Like, I'm just so grateful that I reached a real rock bottom where I was like, I have nothing to lose. I have no joy to lose.
And you tried everything else.
I
was looking at your old videos on it, and you have one where you list out everything you've tried. And I'm like, you tried everything else.
Yeah. And seriously, like, go, like, if anybody is in this spot where I feel like the most common thing is people feel like they don't want to be on medication for the rest of their life, which, first of all, why? Taking one tiny little pill every single day is 1% of what I was doing every day to manage my depression on my own. It has made everything so much easier. It's easier to exercise. It's easier to eat healthy. It's easier to socialize. It's easier to go out and be in the sun and enjoy it and listen to music that makes me happy. Like, it makes everything else so much easier. And when I was holistically managing my depression, I was taking fistfuls of supplements and laying on $1,000 radiation mat, and doing red light therapy and going to the gym and doing yoga and then switching to a different kind of yoga that's more spiritually centering. Like, managing your mental health is a full-time job, so it's so much easier.
Expensive too.
Oh my God, so much more expensive. Like, now I think I pay $30 a month for my antidepressant. Like, it just, and then the other thing is people feel like, well, I'm not just broken. I don't like, or more kind of like wanting to feel like, I don't want to say that I'm just broken and that I need a pill to be okay.
Yes.
Well, I'm broken and I need a pill to be okay.
Yeah.
Like, it just doesn't fucking matter. And maybe there's something wrong with my brain. Maybe there's not. Maybe in 30 years, I'll realize that I was depressed because of some other thing. Like, I was not figuring out the answer, and I was depressed, heavily, heavily, heavily depressed. My depression came on really hard from 15 to 26. So I spent 11 years.
It's a long time.
My whole 20s. I went through a whole pregnancy with a baby, like, where I was depressed every single day, wanted to die every single day.
As if like, pregnancy is not hard enough.
Oh my God, seriously. And like, as if it's not worse, everybody was like, well, are you going to stay on during your pregnancy? Because I had another baby. I was like, hell yeah, I am. Because nothing could be worse for my baby than their mom sitting there every single day wanting to die.
Which is also scientifically proven. Yes. Like, it is hard on the baby in your womb if you have anxiety and depression. Yes.
And it shows in both of my babies and their temperaments. And it has transformed my relationship with motherhood, like, in the most meaningful way, and transformed my relationship with spirituality, where before even I used spirituality so much as a thing. I needed it to be okay. It was my potential escape hatch. I just felt like if I could just figure out one more spiritual secret, like, that would be the thing that would make me okay. Versus now that I'm not constant, like, I am okay now. Now I experience so much more spiritual richness. I feel like I'm connecting on such a spiritual level with my children, with my husband, with nature. Like, it's just, instead of constantly trying to climb out of a deficit, I'm like enjoying things and thriving and experiencing things and experiencing magic with my spirituality. Like, before I was looking for salvation, and now I'm experiencing like miracles and magic, and I'm able to feel it. And it's just, I love it so much. So
I love it so much for you. Truly, like, keep preaching that. I didn't do any of that shit before I got on mine. But now I can be like, well, my friend did. So
trust me, I tried it all and none of it works. Just go talk to a doctor.
I also was thinking, as you were saying that, like, we started this conversation where you were talking about spirituality and science. And who's to say Zoloft isn't fucking spiritual?
Absolutely.
And that the scientist who cooked that shit up wasn't getting some divine something.
Literally answering a prayer. And like, I have noticed now that when I manifest something, when I'm looking for a miracle, the miracle comes in the form of something real and tangible. The miracle comes in the form of a book I read, or a medicine that I take, or something that happens. Like, it's not like a spiritual download that heals me. It's like, this is my little miracle.
Yes.
And I am so grateful that I let it be that, instead of feeling like I had to choose between science or spirituality, or medication and like being well.
Yes. And I think that is such a theme that I'm sensing here too, is like, spirituality, it's like, it's not usually, maybe sometimes, but it's not usually going to be like a voice from the heavens or an angel that comes down. It's probably going to be like the book you discover on your shelf, or your friend texting you something, or the podcast you're listening to that you're like, oh, damn, I really needed to hear that. And I think when you're putting yourself in a place to be open to those things, like, again, it feels like such a spiritual thing. I even think like how beautiful with your mom, because I know obviously based on factors we've discussed, that's probably a complicated relationship. But she was one who opened that door for you and broke something generational by being like, you know what, enough is enough. This might be a little bit outside of my worldview, but like, I've got to try something here. And she did. And that gave you permission. And that's a really beautiful thing to think about too. And huzzah for SSRIs.
I know. I'm so grateful.
Ash, I love you so much.
I love
Thank
you
so much for doing this for everyone. I literally texted Ashy yesterday and I'm like, you are a mother to 2 young children. I'm so sorry for doing this, but can you come tomorrow? I like knew I needed you now.
Well, it had to be last minute or I would have canceled.
That's what you said.
Sorry,
no, it worked out perfectly. I'm like, come tomorrow morning. You're like, okay, fine. So thank you for being here. I will link all the places that people can find you. And I will be needing you back to do more of a deep dive on manifestation. I kind of want to do a deep dive on manifestation and money specifically.
Oh my God, should we do that?
Yeah,
that would be so
we
fun.
Should, because I've had like a lot of questions for you about money. So we'll save it for an episode. Oh,
I love that. Okay.
You're the best. So much, Thank you for being here. Thank you everyone for listening. Bye.